the debate is who would be the main event if John Jones and Conor um competes there. I got a simple reason and explanation for all this. I got a simple answer for you. Donald Trump and Dana White has announced that they will be doing a UFC pay-per-view at the White House. One of the greatest events in combat sports history that you can put on. You know, a lot of fighters are chomping at the bit to be there. A lot of people want to be involved. You know, to be at the White House doing a sporting event, nobody has ever been able to do that. So now to see that come to fruition as an American and as a sports fan, it's a dream come true. And I think, you know, for me, this a reason behind why I brought this up because when you have a card this big, especially as an American, you got two names that come to mind. One for Americans, Jon Jones. I've talked about him half length. Yeah, I know he is the greatest of all time. You know, Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, one of the greatest money makers in the sports history. Well, if he is the greatest, you know, outside of Ronda Rousey. Um, those two are chomping at the bit. And I've spoken this at length. I did a whole episode. Go check it out where I defended Jon Jones and his decision to not defy Tom Aspinall for the UFC heavyweight strap. But now it's coming to bite him a little bit. And I say that, you know, sarcastically because Dana White is going on and said, I don't really need Jon Jones. I don't trust Jon Jones. I'd rather give the spot to Conor McGregor. Now, this is no disrespect to the fans, but if y'all believe that Dana White is going to have one of the greatest pay-per-views to ever grace our screens and our eyeballs at the White House, our national capital, and not put the greatest American combat sports athlete not on that card, you're sadly mistaken. And you know, the debate is who will be the main event if Jon Jones and Conor um, competes there. I got a simple reason and explanation for all this. I got a simple answer for you. Jon Jones will headline. Why? Now, people might say, well, Conor's the biggest star in the sport. Yeah, you're right. Maybe 3 years ago. And look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Conor. You know, I love Conor McGregor, one of the greatest showmen, you know, until I came along. I think I'm the greatest showman now, but I'll give him his props to say he is the biggest star the UFC has ever produced. The problem with Conor, and I'm not going to talk about his legal issues. Same with John. You know, it's been documented, but this is not an argument about who's a greater, you know, religious person here. We're talking about combat sports. Um, Connor's coming off an injury to Dustin Poirier in their third trilogy fight. Well, in their trilogy fight, and he hasn't fought in 4 or 5 years. Coming off a major leg injury, he pulled out last year over, you know, an injured toe. I'm not going to make fun of him over that. As someone who trains, I know it's not that easy to just be, you know, hopping, you know, all over the place and still, you know, sticking with dates, especially when you're at that level. You know, Connor, for as beloved as he is, I do think that at 36 years old, having fought since he was 31, 32, you know, the stars dwindling a little bit. And I'm not being disrespectful at all. I love Connor. There's no shade to him at all. But I think as fans and, you know, for the media, Connor will always, you know, get some sort of clicks. But I don't know if the hype is there for him anymore. And I'm not saying that because he's a lesser athlete. It's been so many years, time has gone on. And when you have a Alex Pereira, you have a Tom Aspinall, you have a Hamza Shemaya, if you have a Ilya Taporia, the list goes on of great, you know, superstar, you know, athletes in the making. Um, you don't really need to rely on him, especially at the White House. And so for me, I look at it as, you know, it's the equivalent to Ireland throwing a pay-per-view at their national capital and not putting Conor McGregor on the pay-per-view. It makes no sense. And so for me, I think despite what people say about John Duncan Tom and all this nonsense, you know, whether you like him or hate him, Jon Jones is the greatest to ever do it. Despite people want to cherry picking his resume and calling him all types of flagrant stuff, I'm going to stand behind this. And it's not just because I'm a fan of Jon Jones and I respect the athlete of Jon Jones, but I also respect the history of the sport. And I think a lot of fans have lost that. I think a lot of fans are very disrespectful to fighters. They lose one time or they do something they don't like, they pull out of a fight, they're trash, they're fraud checked, they're useless, they need to go to a smaller promotion, they're washed up, all of this garbage. Now for me, Jon Jones, greatest to ever do it. He wants to end his career on a high note at the White House. He didn't get to do it against Stipe Madison Square Garden MSG in 2024 when he successfully defended the belt. Love Stipe. But I think he wants to go out at the top. I think he wants to have that grand finale that most athletes get at that level, a nice acknowledgement for his career. And I think Dana White is, he's probably a little mad that Jon Jones didn't take the fight. But like I said, I've been over at length. I'm not going to make God listen to this whole spiel all over again. I would just say Dana is probably, he feels a little snubbed, but he'll get over it. The White House card is not for another almost 10 months. He'll put Jon Jones as the main event as long as Jon Jones is healthy and can compete. It's going to be Jon Jones' main event. There's nobody in America in an American in the UFC right now bigger than Jon Jones, and they're not going to give it to Conor because it's a White House pay-per-view for Americans. And this is not a nationality or citizen debate here. This is more of a pure sport fan, a pure sports idea and vision. You have the NBA championships. Well, I can't really use that example, but as a combat sport, you need to put the biggest star to ever grace the octagon. Jon Jones deserves the main event. He will most likely get the main event. And for all the people saying he's ducking Tom Aspinall, don't be surprised if he actually fights Tom Aspinall at the White House. So it's a win-win for all of us, especially for me, because Jon Jones, I'm still getting that interview. Yeah, you're not gonna be ducking me. All right, watch yourself.